Welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and we get to look back in history. That's what it's all about. Today's guest is going to take us back a long ways. Let's call it Grandma's story. I know you'll love it. Let's meet. You are Herb the...
comedian, Herb Fields.
Herb Fields, and I've already been told the comedian. When did you learn to be a comedian?
I actually remembered almost every joke ever told me, but I went to college after serving 6 months in the reserve program in Portland, and one of the young men would drive down to Medford, and he charges $5, come down on a Saturday night and back home Sunday.
Oh.
And we paid $5, and one time there was 3 girls in the back seat. Him and I was in the front seat. And I started telling jokes because it wasn't embarrassment. They couldn't see me. And easy, and I just kept improving or not improving, depending on your viewpoint.
Well, now, Herb, why was this so new to you? Why did you have to be shrouded in darkness to...
I was super shy. I remember, and I know the lady's name, and I won't give it unless you ask for it, but I was freshman in high school, and she was walking towards me, and my friend was by me, and I said, hello, and turned beet red. That's how shy I was.
Oh, Herb.
And I just was super, super shy, you know, all through high school.
Well, let's talk about your early years and your early memories. You were here in Rogue Valley.
Yes, I was born in Grants Pass on Burgess Street, and the address used to be 203 East Burgess, although it was on the west side of 6th Street, about a block north of Bridge Street. And I never remembered living with my parents. They separated when I was about 2. And my sister was born about the time they separated. And I was told that my dad and mom come and got me and took me over the house, and I wouldn't eat for 3 days.
And why was it that you didn't? This man is older, right?
Here's my grandfather. He was born July 17th, 1892. And this is my grandmother. This is my step-grandfather. And
So these folks...
I said, Granddaddy, come to dinner. I would not eat for 3 days.
Well,
They
now,
had to bring me back.
because this was the grandma, was your mother. Grandpa was your dad.
Yeah,
And
I did. When I was about 3 years old, 3.5, a lady come up and ruffled my hair while I was sitting on the steps at the house on Burgess Street. And she talked to my grandmother, and I finally said, who's this? I didn't know her. Said, that's your mother. I said, you're my mother. No, I'm your grandmother. And I said, can I call you my old mama? And you my new one. And
now, Burgess Street, isn't that just a little short street between...
I really don't know. We lived on it. There was a...
I think you're right next to Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Because I'm right next to Bridge Street on...
Fritz Eisman lived on Bridge Street. We used to sneak off and go over to his house.
Oh, how
And
much?
then Claude Dean lived the other side of the street, and a lady we called Grandma Perry, who her husband John Perry died before I can remember. I don't remember whether I saw
let's talk about your school days, because you have some fascinating stories, other than being so super shy.
Well,
This is history, folks. The Tokay is named for what?
I don't know.
A grape. This used to be way up in the grape growing country way out of town. The high school was way up there, wasn't it?
Well, the only high school I knew is where the old high school is now, off of 9th Street.
Right. And town was over on 6th Street, so it was
Basically, the whole town was on 6th Street.
Yep. Come. You brought this. I met Herb at a difficult time for both of us, right? It was a funeral, a memorial service for whom?
Gary Fixon. Gary was the only person I can remember that I went from the 1st grade at Riverside through the 12th grade, Grants Pass High, and we sat right behind each other many years. One of the strange things that Gary told Georgia that I had forgotten, I am a whiz at math. I do things most people can't. I'm born with that talent. I can't say. But Gary said I was sitting in front of him and put both hands on the desk. Yeah. My legs are short, and I would do the 12 multiplication tables backwards. And he said, I wish I could have said anywhere else in the room. He made us look so dumb. And I forgot all about it because it was just, we all born with talents. And we all born without talents. I wish I had half as many talents Gary had. If you ever saw what Gary could do, he was amazing.
Well, we'll talk about Gary and his dad in just a minute, but why don't you introduce us to the gal next?
This is my beautiful wife. I met her at church, and she only went out with me because I knew her brother. And we walked up to get my car, and then went up to where she was working. And she said to me, what do you want to be? And I said, well, I always want to be a preacher. She said, that's exactly the type I'm looking for. And I said, she proposed to me on a first date. I interpreted the way I want to.
Are you a preacher by profession here?
No, I was school custodian, but I do some preaching.
Well, custodian, that's a part of the other story, isn't it? We've got a picture right here in the yearbook.
Page 20.
Page 20. Oh, you didn't even know how to tell us about page 20.
Well, it's a picture they took of the custodians at Grants Pass High. And my grandfather worked there when he got the job when he was around 60. And didn't know what he was going to do. He worked for George Hamlin Turkey Ranch. George Hamlin died. His wife let him go. And because the Turkey Ranch went under, we lived out on the Redwood Highway where the drive-in was. And that was a turkey ranch. And I used to go, he'd turn the incubators, and I never could stay awake till he turned them the second time. Never could. He tried to teach me to fish. I'm no fisherman. But he would walk down the streets, and we would go over and pay the electric bill, pay the water bill. Taught me to be honest. No matter what you do, be honest.
Now that's stuck with you, hasn't it? If you don't mind, I'll just mention that Dad wasn't around to teach you these things. Mom wasn't around to teach you these things. But somebody was, and I've got a picture of her.
This is my grandmother, Emily Alice Summers. She was one of 8 girls and 2 boys. Her maiden name was Meek. She lived out in the Missouri Flat area. And when her dad died, he gave each of the girls $1, and the 2 boys got everything else. One of the 2 boys, I think it was John, died 2 weeks later. So everything went to George Herbert Meek, that I was named after. And he died when I was 9 years old. I remember seeing him one time. I never saw the old farmhouse. It's still there. when I drive by, they say, there it is, but I never went, just could see it. And most, her and my grandfather and her brothers and sisters and in-laws are buried in the Missouri Flat Cemetery.
Oh, and for you folks who aren't from Missouri Flat, that's the part of our history. Missouri, I'm sure, is named for all the people that came west.
Her father and mother both came from Missouri and located here, so they called that area Missouri Flat. And Joe Meek, first sheriff of Oregon, was a distant relative of my.
First sheriff? Oh my, that really takes us back.
He walked across the plains to Washington, D.C. for some political reason. I do not know what it was.
Oh, I wish some historian could tell us what that story.
You might contact,
Probably it's in the state archives.
see, what's David Hill's wife's mother's name?
Pruitt?
Oh,
Pruitt.
Claudette?
Claudia Pruitt. She can tell you more about Oregon history than anybody I know.
That is the absolute truth
And she's a good friend.
of yours and of mine. And she's been on this show. She is now over studying Burns history,
Right?
enjoying that. I just thought I'd show you some of the dresses that girls were wearing back then. My goodness, we thought they were the fancy things. Did you get to go to the prom?
Yes.
Ooh,
I
with
never
the-
got to go. My folks wouldn't let me go to the dance. And people said, well, they wouldn't let me wear a particular type of T-shirt. I couldn't get a crew cut. And friends asked me, well, boil down to this. I honored them.
You
It wa-
honored them.
I honored my parents, my grandparents. It wasn't worth fussing about because when I really wanted something, and I learned something very young age, if you want your own way, do everything you ask. And if you don't want to do something, you stay dressed up on Sunday. You never had to split any wood on Sunday.
Now there's a story I'd never heard before. Let me just show you this picture. What comes to mind when either of you see something like this? There's a car here that you just won't see too often on the
Yeah.
street.
It's a 50 Oldsmobile.
Well, what do you think when you think about those days?
Well, I think Gary Fixon, I came home with the servers, and he was working at the typewriter shop across from the Rogue Theater. And he says, well, Herb, I'm busy now. Here's the keys to my car. Don't worry about the gas. Be back at 4:30 or 5, whatever. So I went out to Hugo and got my mother. We went all over the country. He offered to sell me that car for $700, and I didn't have 75 cents. I wanted that car so bad. And Gary let me drive. Well, the first car I remember him having was a 34, 35 Cadillac. I never got to drive that, but I drove all of his other cars except for his 53, 54 Corvette.
Well, let's talk.
He said that was too much car for me to drive.
Tell me a little bit. Gary's mother has quite a story about her. She was bold and brave young woman. Her dad was the chief of the cavemen.
I know nothing about that.
Oh my goodness. Well, Gary was pretty proud. And his dad worked as a welder.
Fixing welding works.
And he went on a train to fix a broken train. He and his dad, because there's lots of places trains go that roads can't. So they had to go on a hand car, is that
Yeah.
right? Did you hear that story from Gary?
No, I've never heard that story.
Oh, they didn't know it was going to take a long time to fix the train, and they didn't go with picnic lunch or anything. It was quite. Gary had stories, and I wished I had recorded 20 hours instead of 2 hours of Gary.
Gary would tell tall tales, and I'm a person that believes anything you tell me. And so I asked his mother. His mother denied it happening, but he said his aunt bought a convertible. And she's driving down the road at 40 miles an hour, and she pushes the button, and the convertible top blows off. It never happened. I don't think it ever happened, but Gary never admitted it never happened. It was a funny story.
Gary was, he had an incredible collection of history. Fortunately, he's left it for us as far as all those pictures that he had duplicated. He had a heart for history and for stories. He has them on computer, and I miss him very much because he was just fun to stop by and chat with, wasn't he?
Gary did something that I can hardly believe. You go up to Gary's house, and he never put on the image that he ever had a dime, wouldn't even deny it. Everything at his place was perfectly positioned, no dust. Every tool he had was positioned. Every lawnmower was as clean as the day he bought it. And I've never seen anybody that meticulous. His house could be on Better Homes and Gardens. Easily.
And should have been.
Should be.
It was, when you talk about tools, that was an old barn or something on the irrigation ditch. And the family had several homes there, the Fixon family.
I understand his father, himself, his kids, and grandkids, 4 generations live on that property, which is very, very rare. And I've been in. Gary's folks, the few times I went out to see him, treated me as special as they could treat anybody.
Well, now you bring up something about friends and neighbors. Why did you need more family? You had Grandma and Grandpa.
I had Grandpa and Grandma in the church family, but I also would visit my special friends, Gary Fixon, Charles Dallas, Bill Johnson, who disappeared after him and his wife. So I have no idea where he
Well, Dallas, is that Carl Dallas's kid?
Carl Dallas's kid.
The cop?
Yeah.
And Carl Dallas, I got to tell you something funny about Charles. I took my car and I was going too fast across that Rogue River Bridge. I turned in where Charles was working at the time. He distributed records and the building was separated. And when I turned in, the state police was sitting there. I said, don't even look at him. And Charles is over here, and I'm separated. Him and his buddy goes outside. He pounds the door. Is Herb Fields in there? This is a place. They said I jumped 10 miles high. And then he went home and told his dad. But the most memorable one with the Dallases was there was a Herbert C. Fields, as far as I know, no relation, in Medford. Got killed in an auto accident. I was the most famous corpse for about 2 weeks as you ever saw.
Every time they'd see you, I thought you were dead. Oh, Carl Dallas was a pretty famous cop around here, and I hope that I can talk to his daughter.
He offered to sell me his last house they lived in for I think $20,000 or $25,000. And I didn't have the money, and he was in essence giving it to me at that price.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, the reason you're back here, all the way from deep eastern Oregon, Crooked
River Rectory, near Redmond.
Is that where that bridge is that's how far down to the river?
Too far.
The Crooked River?
Must be 200 feet
200
anyway.
feet, something like that.
Oh, if you're ever over in eastern Oregon, you'll want to go across the Crooked River Gorge. You can't even spit down to the bottom. I think
And go to Madras, and from Madras go down to the river, scenic, and that is one of the most beautiful places to have a picnic. Beautiful over there.
Well, now you've marked some things in here. I just don't want to miss anything. What brings you over to Grants Pass this weekend?
It's my class reunion, and they decided a few years ago, they're asking the grades before us and the grades after us to show up. And unfortunately, the people that live here never show up. Gary would not come, and I know others who would not come. But those who live
Far away.
they have been at a 50th. I think we had one family from England.
Oh, absolutely. I know Doug's class of 50 does the same thing. People come from all over. It's so much fun. This is the guy that graduated. 19 and what?
56.
56. My sister-in-law, Barbara Beck, and her husband, Jimmy Ballard, graduated in 54. So, of course, I had to call them up and say, remember? They didn't remember the sophomore. Of course, if you were that quiet. Huh?
He's an underclassman.
He's
You don't pay attention to them.
Oh, this picture is just so beautiful. Tell me about this suit.
This soldier suit, they originally gave me that suit. I think Charlie Ring gave me the suit. He was my grandmother's nephew. Either that or a sailor suit. I have a picture of my son in this suit. I have a picture of my grandson in this suit. And we lost the belt here and the hat, so we traded hats. And when we took a picture of my son, and I didn't bring it, I should have, I showed the picture to my mother, and she thought they was both me.
Ah, so you, later years,
My daughter still has this suit. It's at least 65 years old.
so then later you got acquainted with your mother?
Now, I got acquainted gradually over the years. She always treated me very nice. And she, by limited income with another family, I have a half-brother named John Johnson, who I hardly knew, but when I was preaching in Nevada, we became very well acquainted. His personality is halfway between my sister's and mine.
Okay, so what's sister's name?
Paulette, Paul's now it was.
And so folks right remember her, but look at Grandma's shoes. I mean, doesn't she just absolutely look the typical grandma?
She would not wear anything but those wide-heeled shoes.
Of course.
That's the only kind she would wear.
Black lace-up shoes, ladylike, sturdy shoes. And Grandpa, this is wonderful. These folks took in you and your sister?
Yes, I had a friend of mine a while back. He was thinking about marrying a lady that was divorced twice. He came to me and asked me what I thought. This is what I told him.
Okay.
I told him that, can you carry the luggage? This man carried the luggage that comes with a divorced woman.
Baggage.
4 kids of hers and grandkids. And I said, can you carry this lady's luggage?
Okay.
And he decided he couldn't and married someone else. There, I think when the scriptures talk about marriage and divorce, it's not a salvation issue. This is my personal opinion. It is a happiness. He carried the baggage as well as anyone could have.
And he's your step-grandpa. And he took care of 4 of you kids?
And my dad for 5, 6 years, and my aunt, who's 15 years younger than I am, took care of her, raised as his own. And the other 2 children, every child respected him.
Well, my hat's for all you step-grandmas and step-grandpas, step-moms and dads, because kids need it. I love it. It looks like the two of you have been together for quite a while. What's the story?
46 years in
Oh.
December.
46 years.
We got married 3 years after he died.
Was Grandma still living?
No, Grandma was, but Grandpa wasn't, and Georgia never met him. And I said, we got two choices. Either December 21st, out of respect, or July 17th. She said, I'm not going to wait 7 months.
Yeah. Well, because he was so important. Now, this enlarged picture, it has, it's a little,
It's from a newspaper picture.
you mean a little picture in the newspaper you've
My
had?
sister had it blown up and gave it to everybody that wanted one.
Oh, that's a wonderful gift.
And the strange thing, he bought my grandmother a dress at Golden Rule. And when they found out he died, before we got down there to pick it up, they sold the dress he put on layaway. So she never got the dress.
That's a tough story, but this is the grandma, the sweetheart. Your sister's name?
Paulette,
Paulette. And she's still living in this area?
she's in Urrington, Nevada.
Oh, that's a long ways. Well, maybe we should send Paulette the story about you and Paulette, Grandma and Grandpa. And I sure thank you for coming all the way from...
This suit was red.
Uh-huh. And this was a green or gray?
The
Army green.
Army green.
Army color of that age. It's not brown, it's not green, it's somewhere in between.
Olive. Yeah, olive drab. I sure thank you for coming all this way and sharing these stories, especially the wonderful news about Grandma and Grandpa's and how important they are for a kid growing tall and strong and straight and having a marriage that works.
Do we
Divorce
have
is-
time to say one more thing?
We're out of time.